Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Two names, one area, but what is the reality? Are they really different worlds or just different words? How does their Kashmir compare with ours? What role does Muzaffarabad play in Srinagar's troubles? And what do the Kashmiris have to say about it all? Sabyasachi Jain and the Eyewitness crew spent a week across the border and came back with the first Indian-made TV report from the other side of paradise.
It was in Islamabad that our image of Azad Kashmir, or what we call Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, began to take shape. Even before we entered Pakistan's piece of paradise, we were left in no doubt of what they feel for it. One of the first things one notices about Pakistan is the immense amount of interest shown in Kashmir. For instance, this newspaper, which I picked up on the flight from Delhi to Lahore, has no less than 10 large news items about the valley and the so-called liberation struggle.
At the moment, I would say, issue number one, both on the official agenda and on the public agenda, is Kashmir.
Islamabad's Kashmir House is the focus of Pakistan's efforts to garner international support for its position. And though Azad Kashmir is ostensibly a separate country with its own constitution and flag, both its president and prime minister chose to meet us in Islamabad. The Prime Minister, Sardar Muhammad Abdul Qayyum Khan, is a cultivated man, but he appears to love Pakistan more than Kashmir.
If at all independent Kashmir was carved out against my wishes and against the political strength that I wield, which I have absolutely no doubt that nobody can challenge it and nobody can take it away from me, I would then seek asylum or refuge here in Punjab.
Sardar Qayyum and the President Sardar Sikandar Hayat Khan have shared power for a long time. When one is Prime Minister, the other is President. They specifically promised us full and free access to all parts of Azad Kashmir. But we soon realized it wouldn't be so simple. This is the river Jhelum, which flows down from Srinagar and Uri into Pakistan. On the far side of the river is so-called Azad Kashmir. After 3.5 days of hanging loose in Islamabad and bickering with bureaucrats over the freedom and flexibility of schedule we should be permitted, we are finally on our way to the capital of Azad Kashmir, Muzaffarabad. The trouble was, our permission to visit Muzaffarabad coincided with US threats to declare Pakistan a terrorist state if it doesn't stop arming Kashmiri militants. Their idea was to get a clean chit from us.
The main objective was also to dispel the false propaganda with regard to establishment of any training camps.
From day one, everybody swore there were no training camps.
इसमें कोई सदाकत नहीं है कि लोगों को जो है ना वो ट्रेनिंग देकर पाकिस्तान या आज़ाद कश्मीर की सरजमीन इस्तेमाल की जाती है या ट्रेनिंग दी जाती है.
Even the Jamaat-e-Islami, which has its own training camps, didn't want to admit it.
Government is not allowing us. If they allow us, we can manage dozens of training camps in Azad Kashmir.
Instead, we were told that Afghanistan is where the training is done.
I know for sure, and many people know, the Americans know, the others know, that hundreds of these youngsters trickled into Afghanistan, stayed there for quite a long time, got training, got weapons, and they go back.
But the JKLF, who in Pakistan are considered opponents of the government, told us a different story.
We brought the boys from there, trained them here.
You trained them here in Azad Kashmir?
Yes, we trained them here in Azad Kashmir. We sent them back.
Did the Pakistan government help you?
Initially, they did help us in the sense that they didn't, you see, just, check us very much.
I take it for granted that the ISI actually helped you with.
No, that's exactly I say.
In recent years, much to Pakistan's dismay, the tide of Kashmiri nationalism has been rising within Azad Kashmir. It reached a peak last year when the JKLF tried to cross the line of control. As a result, the Pakistan government no longer trusts Amanullah Khan and the JKLF. They stand for an independent Kashmir and are convinced that the Kashmiris want an end to Pakistani occupation.
If there is a fair and impartial plebiscite tomorrow in Azad Kashmir, I think Pakistan will have a shock of its life.
Now some JKLF leaders even openly proclaim that Pakistan is just using Kashmiris as cannon fodder. Hashim Qureshi, who hijacked the Indian Airlines aircraft to Lahore in 1971, today claims this is Pakistan's attitude to Kashmir.
इनको मारने दो कश्मीरियों को, अगर ये हिंदुस्तान से निकालते तो चलो हम ले लेंगे, अगर नहीं निकालते तो चलो इसी लड़ाई पे हम पाकिस्तान से इंडिया के साथ जना सियाचिन ग्लेशियर्स और ये बोलर बेराज वगैरह अपनी इन मामलों में और सिंध के मामलों में इनसे सौदाबाजी करेंगे. ये वो पॉलिसी.
The Azad Kashmir government was keen to protect us from such contamination. Security men cautioned us against meeting members of the National Students Federation, claiming they were unpredictable and dangerous. But not only were they extremely nice, they were refreshingly secular.
हम ये महसूस करते हैं कि अगर हम पाकिस्तान के साथ शामिल हुए तो हमें हमारे हुकूक मिलते हुए नज़र नहीं आते. वहाँ हमारे बुनियादी हुकूक महफूज नहीं हैं और हम नहीं मिल सकते. हम पहले ही यहाँ जो ज़िंदगी गुजार रहे हैं इतनी तल्ख गुजार रहे हैं.
We only managed to meet Ijaz because he came to our rooms unexpectedly late one evening. And even then, our interview was interrupted with uncanny timing.
मुजाहिदीन को आए हुए यहाँ 4-4, 5-5 साल हो गए. आप उनसे बराह रास्त मिलें तो
एक मिनट आप प्लीज एक्सक्यूज प्लीज एक्सक्यूज.
In fact, so closely were we chaperoned that wherever we stayed, the guards had orders to keep us in and everybody else out. The phones had been removed and 4 guards were transferred after the meeting with Ijaz.
If anyone thinks Indian Kashmir is a police state, I would suggest he visit Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. In Srinagar, I've never found the authorities obstructing us in any way, even when our declared intention is to unearth human rights violations. But here in Muzaffarabad, not only are we under constant hostile scrutiny and under virtual house arrest, every attempt is made to intimidate us. Yesterday, they went to the ridiculous extent of pulling in a DIG and an SP of the special branch to question us.
This is what the Director General of Information told us when he thought the camera wasn't filming.
Why does this SP of the special branch follow us around all the time?
ये तो करता रहेगा आपको follow.
क्यों?
मुझे क्या पता है?
You are the Director General of Information.
I am being followed, my dear, जब से आप यहाँ पे आए हुए हैं.
In fact, the spies tailing us were camera shy. This man with the muffler called himself Shahid. He was a sort of freewheeling James Bond. He was assisted by a battery of babus who, from what I could tell, simply took notes. This man, Gul, from Pakistan TV, was there to record our activities for posterity. From bed tea to nightcap, we were always in his sights. In fact, everything we did was not only closely monitored, it was carefully pre-arranged. Even when we went to the market to talk to people, the schedule was worked out in advance. Most of those we met were staunchly pro-Pakistan.
कश्मीरी पाकिस्तान के साथ रहना चाहते हैं क्योंकि कश्मीर की अक्सरियत जो है वो मुसलमान है और इसलिए हमारा इलाक़ा जो है वो मुसलमानों के साथ होना चाहिए.
बनेगा एक दिन कश्मीर सारा पाकिस्तान बनेगा और एक एक बच्चा इसके लिए कट मरेगा. ये हमारा पैगाम है.
आप अपने आप को पहले कश्मीरी मानते हैं?
मैं पहले अपने आप को पाकिस्तानी कहूँगा.
We evolved a rule of thumb. Those who looked well-fed and prosperous were pro-Pakistan, whereas the lean and hungry ones were likely to resent Pakistani colonization.
पहले कश्मीरी, फिर पाकिस्तानी, फिर बाद पाकिस्तानी. हाँ ठीक है, ठीक कह रहे हैं, वो भी ठीक कह रहे हैं. पहले कश्मीरी.
Ijaz had warned us to be wary of men who pushed to be interviewed. They could be plainclothes men. In fact, they were always present and frequently interrupted our interviews. Just watch this.
तुसी की चाहते हो कि कश्मीर खुद मुख्तार हो?
बिल्कुल. इसके बगैर इससे चारी कोई नहीं.
आजकल यहाँ पे जो सियासी हालात है उनके बारे में आप क्या सोचते हैं?
ये उसके बारे में ये अर्ज है मैं खुद कश्मीर का रहने वाला हूँ.
इनको बात खत्म करने दी.
उसके बारे में ये है.
The most striking thing about Azad Kashmir is that it's drastically different from our own Kashmir. To start with, the language here is not Kashmiri.
आम ज़बान तो यहाँ अपनी पहाड़ी है.
ये पंजाबी से मिलती
जुलती है.
The clothes are not the same either. The firan is not to be seen at all. And Kashmiri culture has been lost.
The people in Azad Kashmir are not so concerned and keen about the protection of their cultural values.
Another important difference is that there's not a single Hindu or Sikh. This man was the last Sikh. Till 1975, he was Rajinder Singh. Now he's Sheikh Muhammad Naseem.
इस्लाम में एक आलमगीर मज़हब था. जब इसकी तालीम मुझे मिली कि ये एक अच्छा मज़हब है तो मैंने इसको अपना लिया, कबूल कर लिया.
But the most interesting difference is that tourism has played virtually no part in Azad Kashmir's development. People here either work for the government or migrate south. In fact, most people are trying to get out.
यहाँ कोई इंडस्ट्री नहीं है, यहाँ प्राइवेट सेक्टर में कोई ऐसा जॉब नहीं है. या तो यहाँ हम क्लर्की करेंगे, या होटलिंग करेंगे, या बर्तन मांजेंगे पाकिस्तान के शहरों के अंदर. यहाँ रोजगार का कोई मुनासिब सिलसिला नहीं.
Of course, our chaperones wanted to show us something quite different, the refugee camps for Indian Kashmiris. There are about 8,000 refugees in 11 camps, and they are the cornerstone of Pakistan's propaganda war. Wherever we went, victims of alleged atrocities were paraded before us.
उन्होंने मेरी टांग काटी कि बाकी की दुनिया को इबरत होनी चाहिए कि आज़ादी का हक नारा हम ना लाएं. ये टांग कैसे काटी उन्होंने? ये एक दाव होता है सर, जो कि दाव होता है जिससे झटका करते हैं. एक बार मारने से वो भेड़ू का गला उठ जाता है. बड़ा लंबा चौड़ा दाव होता है वो. उससे उन्होंने मेरी टांग काटी.
और वहाँ पर जितनी भी ख्वातीन हैं उनको पिकेट पर ले जाते हैं, उनकी वहाँ पर अस्मदरी करते हैं, और नौजवान बूढ़ों बच्चों को ले जाते हैं, उनको मारते पीटते हैं, किसी की टांग काट देते हैं, आंखें निकाल देते हैं.
मेरी बच्ची को भी जख्मी किया और मुझे घसीट कर ले गए. और रोजा अफ्तारी के टाइम उन्हें पानी नहीं कहता है कि ये मुसलमान है, मुसला इनको पेशाब पिलाओ. तो उसमें हम इंडिया में कैसे रह सकते थे?
The refugees are given 450 rupees a month, but are allowed little liberty. For instance, they are not allowed to mix with the locals.
हमें कोई मुलाजमत का या और कोई काम करने का कोई चांस नहीं है. यहाँ पर गवर्नमेंट हमें कोई सहूलत ऐसी मुलाजमत के लिए किसी कारोबार के लिए नहीं दे रही.
ना तो हम नौकरियां कर सकते हैं, ना तो हमें यहाँ पे कोई और काम मुहैया हो सकते हैं.
Though they have no love for India, they don't feel at home in Pakistan either.
परदेश मुसाफिर. हर ईद को मैं 5,000 रुपया देता था अपनी तरफ से गरीबों को. यहाँ मैं ले रहा हूँ, यहाँ मैं ले रहा हूँ, मैं देने वाला नहीं. हिंदुस्तान को बोल दो हमें आजाद कर.
But our chaperones' enthusiasm to show us refugee camps quickly ended when we made a fatal mistake. We insisted on making unscheduled stops along the way. This village, Gari Dupatta, was one such. But clearly in a panic, the security men hustled us out.
Gari Dupatta, you know, that falls on the way from Muzaffarabad to Chakoti, and being a sensitive forward area, might have been that they might have asked you not to take the video films.
They wouldn't. It's not only that they asked us not to shoot. They also asked us not to sit there and talk to the local people. They said, no, move.
But you know that it's quite possible. I was not at that particular time with you, but you were allowed access to the people of Muzaffarabad in my presence.
In fact, just how far we had got under their skin became clear when this report appeared in the Daily Pakistan. The first headline describes us as a spy team, whilst the third asks how we entered 20 liberation camps. Liberation camps? I wonder what those are. And most interestingly, all this was attributed to a senior Azad Kashmir government official. Soon after, Mumtaz Hussain Rathod, the leader of the opposition, moved an adjournment motion about us in the Azad Kashmir Assembly. And of course, questions were also asked in the National Assembly. So when we next went to a refugee camp in a ridiculously long motorcade, we had a well-organized reception committee waiting for us. As a result of the fast enacted by the Azad Kashmir government, we came away convinced they had something to hide. They kept telling us that the Kashmiris were hostile and out for our blood. But the ordinary people we met were welcoming and hospitable, and this only served to corroborate our growing distrust of our chaperones. If this was a PR trip, it backfired badly. If it wasn't, then Allah help Azad Kashmir. For a start, it needs a different name.